The well of being, drinking from the well of being. I want to share with you a story. As I was kind of, as a class was coming up, I'm often kind of looking at my experience to think of what wants to be said. And finding that I wanted to talk about this experience this weekend that I had, that for some way illustrated for me some of the depth of this topic. So I was up visiting a friend of mine who lives in the Northeast Kingdom of Vermont, and which is always a pleasure, and because I love the northern woods. But we went and visited, so he wanted me to meet somebody that he knows. And we went over to meet this man who is 87 years old. He's a former professor of circumpolar studies, of all things. And so we met him in this building that he built. There is a stave church, or stave kirk, he called it. Kirk being an old word for church in English or Anglo-Saxon. Might still be the word in Scandinavian languages. And, Michael told me we were going to see the stave church, and I thought of a church I'd seen in Norway years ago. When I was a student in Europe, I traveled a bit in the summer, and in Bergen there was an old wooden stave church that was quite beautiful. So a stave church is made out of wood, and it's usually kind of cute and quaint in its style. And this man built this church on his property, pretty much in the middle of nowhere. Most people would say that this part of Vermont is pretty poor, it's pretty remote. And he built this, and he built it when he was almost 80. He started building it, and it took him several years to complete. It's this small chapel. And so as we came up, there are three of us. The third person said, so why did you take it on yourself to build this church? And he said, I don't know. And we burst out laughing because it's a ridiculous thing to say. And yet it's also, there's something so deeply true in it. I felt like he really told the truth. He didn't know why he built that church. And a little later, he said he had it in him to do it, which is a little bit of an elaboration on the mystery of what's going on here. It was no small amount of work, I tell you. And certainly to take it on when you're almost 80. But I suspect that there's something very deep inside of him that wanted to respond to his life this way. He wanted to create a space for himself and sometimes for others to be in that reflected something of a response to his life. These are my words. These are not his words. But I was just, reflecting about how he was in touch with something deep inside him. So when I think of the well of being, I love the metaphor of well. I picture peering down inside one, probably like an old well here in New England that's hand dug, lined with stones, and has water you can see in the bottom. I'm not so much thinking of the mechanical wells with pipes down them, but that our being is like a well. Our being is deeply mysterious. And there's some way that much of what we live consciously, it's like the outer wheel of a wheel. It's far from the spoke. It's far from the center. And so when we talk about the well of being, we talk about a process, really, of going down through the layers of earth that we are into something, touching something deep inside of us. And so the well metaphor, it has a sense of deep in it, something that's gone deeper than what we usually see. It has a sense of water in it, which is life, which is essential for our lives. For us to inhabit a piece of land, we need a source of water. For us to inhabit a life, we need a source of water. We need a source where we can drink and be restored, that nature gives to us. Even if it's brought in for miles on pipes from somewhere and chlorinated and filtered and whatever, it's really nature giving us the water. It's part of the deeply fortunate life of this planet to have water. When you think of the alternatives in the cosmos, some of them are quite dry. So it's something essential for life, essential for habiting our lives. And I also was kind of drawn to the metaphor of well because it's really a combination of earth and water, which speaks to me a bit about meditation practice, what we're aiming for, what we're inviting in our being, which is to experience both the stability of earth, to begin to stabilize our hearts and minds amid the flux and the storm and stress of life, but also to slake our thirst, to find something deeply, deeply nourishing, which water is. And water is also a wonderful metaphor for meditation because the taste of water is so subtle. I could argue, though I'm not into arguing, but I could, that it's the best taste on the planet is water. And yet it is so simple. It's probably more complex sometimes than I give it credit. There's a lot of minerals in that water that comes out of the earth. There's a lot of flavors that can be in water. But the mind has to become subtle to taste them. In modern life, sometimes, in my own little inner symbology, I think of Coca-Cola. Apologize to any of you who love Coca-Cola, but it's a lot of sugar. And the taste, yeah, it's got taste, but it's kind of engineered to overwhelm in a certain way. Water doesn't do that. It doesn't overwhelm. The mind, and I would say the heart, they have to become more subtle to appreciate it. And it's really the way of meditation, the path of meditation. To grow still and to grow subtle in our perception of what's real. To grow ever more subtle. And to, as we rest, as we come into a greater stillness, to perceive the nature of this life in a deeper, deeper way. So there you go, the well of being. Welcome to the well of being. And today Today, I really, in the meditation, I introduced two things that are really fundamental. Presence, being really first and foremost. Some of you know this term as mindfulness. Mindfulness kind of functions that way in the Buddhist tradition. And yet, there's something about that word that I've departed from over the years. Part of it is really personal because my conditioning around the word mindfulness early on was very much subject-object related, like I was paying attention to this and that. And that's actually not the truth of mindfulness, but it's really how it kind of got embedded. The mindfulness thing sort of felt like a task I had to do and get good at. And when I started working with teachers that used the word presence, they pointed to it as what I am, that I don't have to go get. Presence is what you are already. And it's what you come back to. And I believe that mindfulness, the practice of mindfulness, is a doorway to come back to presence. So that's why I use that word, presence. And sometimes I'll ditch that word and use a different word. Words are tough. Words are tough because these experiences don't word themselves very well. And sometimes you will help me out with that in your shares. You'll have a better word that works better for you for what's being pointed to here. And also I use the word here and now to describe presence because that's where presence occurs, here and now. But anyway, I'll keep throwing, terms out there as pointers to this fundamental reality that is what we are, and where we can actually find rest and nourishment. So that's the first thing. And the second is the body, about bringing presence to the body. And ironically, sometimes, really learning what it is to bring presence to the body, it can be helpful to recognize that presence is greater than the body. And the body is in it. Because it's so easy, the conditioning is so much the case that we become a person behind the eyes, looking out at the world, creating an object out of everything, including our own body, including our own mind. And it can be really helpful. It can actually release a lot of stress just in itself. To get a taste of presence as a field, what it is, what you are as a field in which experiences happen, including the body. The body is an experience that's happening right now in the field of presence that you are. That's a way to look at it. It's a different way to look at it for many people. And it can be hard to get the left brain going on that. And so sometimes it's helpful to just pat the left brain on the head and say, maybe later, just give this a go. The right brain understands it pretty easily. So those two things, as we go into the week, this class is very much meant to be support for your practice. It's very much meant to encourage you to practice daily. That's no requirement, obviously. And many people will confess sometimes that they don't practice outside of the class. And that's, it's not me that holds that. But it's a really powerful thing to develop a daily practice. So I always encourage people to do that. And this week, as you practice, these two things, presence and the body, are going to be the focus. Just kind of waking up in the body, waking up as the body. So, for those of you who haven't been in this class before, they're recorded for several purposes, but the first is you're going to have the meditation to listen to through the week. And I find that having a guided meditation can be really helpful when you're trying to get established. If you already have a meditation practice, you might not need it. Or you might want to just listen to it once during the week to be reminded of things. And that's completely fine. I don't normally listen to any guided meditation when I meditate. But lately in the summer, I've been listening to some guided meditations. They're not from the Buddhist tradition. They're from a different tradition. And just because I felt like I wanted to develop my mind in some other ways. But I really like meditating without anybody talking to me. And so I ask for the patience of those who, like me, like silent meditations, because I do talk people through. That being said, it's really nice to have somebody interrupt you with their voice and say what you're supposed to be doing, because the mind just wanders all over the place. And when I don't have anyone guiding me, it's quite possible that I will sit down and my mind will go off on a tangent, and that will be the time that's spent, very little actually present. So as you're starting out, I encourage you to take advantage of the recording. I'll cut out the visual because I don't really want people looking at me while I'm meditating, and so you just get the sound. The talk will include my face and the room and so forth, and discussion. And so those exist too because oral teaching is powerful. I came to the Dharma as a teaching in my first year of graduate school, back in the 80s, back in the beginning of the 80s. And I was so steeped in a certain kind of knowledge and reading so much, I just made this vow to learn mostly through oral teaching until I really felt a need for a book. So I read very little for the first few years that I was in the Buddhist practice, and I took in the information orally because I think that's how we human beings work. I think that when someone says it and says it to us, even if it's in a class where it's not quite so personal, it goes somewhere different inside than words on a page. We take it to heart in a different way. That's important to me in another way that I also will suggest is I get my news almost entirely from print, because I find it easier to digest that way, to know what's going on and to not always feel the emotional impact that seeing it can produce, or experience what sometimes is the distortion of commercial media that's trying to get your attention and sensationalize or do funky things. So I can use it that way too. What I'm suggesting that for the Dharma is take it in orally. And so this talk, you'll hear it tonight. Some pieces will stick with you. Listen to it again sometime during the week. They stay up for a while. Eventually they get put up on our YouTube channel, which is available through the Bodhisara website. And that has a longer longevity beyond the course, okay? But for a while, they're just on a link that I'll send you at the end of the course tonight. I'll send you the link for the meditation, for my talk, for the discussion. The discussion sometimes is valuable to listen to, especially if something someone says or something I say to someone really touches you where you're at. It can be good to go back and listen to that again. I would say as a teacher, my own kind of self-appraisal and what I've sometimes heard from others is that my most powerful teaching is often my response to people's questions. There's something about another person, another heart that has a real question that opens something in me, and things will come out. And I'll sometimes hear them coming out of me, and I'm kind of like going, really? I didn't know I knew that. I didn't know that was in there. And sometimes that will happen in these holdings forth, the official Dharma talk. But sometimes they'll come out just in response to someone's question. And I will also say that I believe that truth, spiritual truth especially, is a collaborative process. I get dubbed the teacher, and I know people come back because they like my teaching, they benefit from it. But I know they also come back because of the rest of you and the way that you share and the wisdom that you also contain. And the way that sometimes maybe what I say isn't completely balanced and something else needs to be said to balance it. And so if you think of the group mind, sometimes in the group mind, the very thing that needs to be said is coming up inside of you, the participant. And so rather than what the mind sometimes does, which says, quite humbly, oh, I have nothing to say, or even has something to say, but is kind of afraid to do it. To that, I say that's part of your practice. But to consider that what you say can be a gift here. And be judicious about your time, but take the time you need. Both are true. And sometimes some shares go on for a while because the person is taking the time they need to really let something unfold. Because something happens in the presence of other people. This is the other thing about presence, which is quite mysterious. And I notice this because there are some nights I am not in the mood to do this class. I confess, there are some nights where I'm really not in a good mood. And it's like, and the judgmental mind can get on my case and go, wow, you're some meditation teacher, you're blah, 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 blah. And when I sit down in your presence, it draws something forth, And that's true of all of us. It's just a human thing. We're really gifted at regulating the state of each other. And so there's something that happens when you say things when other people are listening that increases the power of it and allows you to listen to yourself in a different way. And then there's also the listening. So you're not only contributing to the class when you speak, you're contributing to the class when you listen. Your presence matters. I have to say it's a little funky over a computer in some way. I'm an old-fashioned guy. But I've come reluctantly to see that this works. It does work. And people benefit. And your presence does matter. So let me just check in and see if there's anything else I want to say before I kind of turn it over to whoever would like to speak. Just a little more about the daily meditation, since this is the first class and it's the fall and some people feel away from it for the summer. I do think that a regular practice is better than a long practice once in a while. So if you have to shorten the time that you do it, go ahead, just to help it happen. The meditations are generally 30 minutes. Tonight may have only been 25. You can always stop them short if you're listening to them. But the nice thing about the recording is that it makes 30 minutes go by faster than just sitting without it, for the most part. Tell the people you live with what you're doing and that you don't want to be disturbed. But go with what happens. In other words, we can't control things. We can't control everything. We actually can't control much. So if someone starts a jackhammer outside your window, let that be your meditation. Let all of your responses be part of the meditation. Listen to your mind. Listen to your body. It's fine. If you have children that don't respect your closed door, well, that's your practice. It's what it is. Don't meditate with your phone in the room or turn it off. I mean, some people use it as a timer, but if you have it with you, really be resolved not to turn to it because you got a text. Okay. It's just a really important, I think, aspect of the life we live is our relationship with that device, and to have some greater freedom with respect to it. I find that meditation happens when you know every day when you're going to do it. That works best if it's the same time every day. If that doesn't work, you can do it different times of the day. It's just when you wake up, it's helpful if you know where it's going to be in your schedule. Actually put it in your schedule book if you need to. It's simple for me. I do it first thing in the morning. That makes it happen. When that gets interrupted, I can't do that. I have to be at a medical appointment early or whatever happens. I try to get back to it, but the truth is I often don't. And I think a lot of people are like me. It's hard unless you have a schedule. First thing in the morning would not work for a lot of people. So you might need to find a different time of the day. Pick a time of day when it feels like meditation would be easy, a time of day that's conducive to meditation. And that's not always first thing in the morning for people who aren't morning people. And relate to it as a privilege and as a gift to yourself. Please don't turn it into an obligation or the idea that it's good for you and you have to do it. Those thoughts, I think, really don't help. It works best when you want to do it. And you're more likely to want to do it when you feel the gift of it. When something in you can find the place inside of you that's drawn to it, drawn to greater stillness, drawn to going deeper. And I admit that sometimes meditation is frustrating. It's still frustrating for me after 45 years of doing it. There are some meditations that are like suffering. When I'm particularly upset about something perhaps, or in pain. But for the most part, I've really found over the years, it really works to see your meditation time as a refuge and find the place inside of you that's really longing for it, longing for being. We have so much doing. We have so much running around. We have so much input, so much data we have to pay attention to. Give yourself the gift of even 10 minutes of being. I might have mentioned, though I probably mention this more as the course goes on, you don't have to just do this meditating, sitting still. Being, drinking from the well of being is ultimately what we want to be doing all the time. And so you can start that any moment. You can remember it. But tonight's probably not going to be the time I'm going to talk about that too much. Okay.